Okay. So basically, when we look at one market, we have two markets that we are going to look at now. I told you we are going to look at the demand side. We also look at the supply side. So basically, let's look at the demand side. And when it comes to the demand side, we say that every individual has a desire. Now we're talking about the desire. The desire simply means what we wish we could have or what we wish to have. And this desire, we can table the desires by listing all the things that we intend to have and the things we intend to acquire. Okay. So let's assume that we have an individual one. Now, an individual one wish to have a bag of rice. So let's say a bag of rice for individual one. So for individual one, his motive is to have a bag of rice. But given his constraint, the constraint here we are talking in terms of, we are referring in terms of the price of the commodity and the person's income. So we know that given a person's income, his real income is being influenced based on the price. So we are saying that a person's real income would be equal to his nominal income all over the price of the commodity. Now, what are we saying? We are saying that when your real income, the nominal income is the actual income that you are having, but the real income is being determined by what your nominal income can buy. So when price increases, your real income is likely to fall. So let's assume that given my income, say 6,000, and I wish to buy kilos of sugar. Okay, or it can be anything. It can be rice, or it can be anything that I intend to buy. Now, what I am being faced with is the issue of price. So as and when price increases, the quantity of commodity that my income can buy diminishes with time. So let's say with time, when I went to the market, when the price was 1 cedi, I could buy 10 bags of, let's say, sugar. Now, when the price went to 2 cedis, given my constant nominal income, when I went to the market, I couldn't buy the 10, but this time I could buy 7. At the same time, when price increased to 3, given my income, I couldn't buy 7, but I could buy 5 bags or kilos of the rice or the oil that I'm talking, the sugar that I'm referring to. So it tells us that as and when price increases, the quantity of goods and services that the consumer desire to hold declines with time, reduces. So we have a table here, and the table is showing the respective prices as well as the respective quantity. So if you look at the first column, which I have cancelled, shows the respective prices of the goods and the respective quantity of rice that I can buy. Now we consider such a table that is showing the relationship between the price and the quantity that an individual, a single person, can buy or is willing and has the ability to buy. We define such table as the individual demand schedule. So if you ask a layman about demand, what the layman would obviously tell you is that demand is what he wished to buy, he desire to have. But to economists, our demand is not what we wish to buy. It is our ability to buy and our willingness to buy what we want to buy. So the wish must come, and the ability to buy must also come, and the willingness to buy must come. So what we are saying is that when we talk about individual demand schedule, the individual demand schedule is only showing a table which has the quantity of goods and services with respect to the prices that an individual is willing and able to buy at various prices. So if you look at the various prices, the individual has no control over the prices, but the individual can vary the quantity of goods that he intends to buy. So the individual has, and when the price of the good is increasing, the individual adjusts the quantity he buys with it by reducing it. Now let's take another individual 2. Now for individual 2, let's say he's born wealthy. So with the individual 2, his ability to buy more bags of the same commodity is high. So we will see variation in individual 2 buying more than individual 1. So if we take the price and we compare it to the quantity of goods that individual 1 is willing and able to buy, that one also gives us the individual demand schedule for individual 1. But in economics, we don't, since our main focus is with the market demand. So what we do is that we aggregate the market demand, we aggregate the individual demand schedule by adding just the quantities, since we do not have control over the price, but we have control over the quantity that the person buys at various prices. So I can have individual 1's quantity bought at various prices, individual 2 quantity bought at various prices, individual 3 quantities bought at various prices for a commodity. So when I add them, I will get the market demand schedule. So what are we saying? So when we talk about the schedule, we are just referring to a table that shows the relationship between the possible prices and quantities of a commodity. So here, the emphasis, if you can see, the emphasis is on commodity. Okay, that consumers, we have more consumers are willing and able to buy over a period of time. So we are dealing with one commodity, we are dealing with consumers. So if you are talking about an individual demand schedule, then the focus is going to be on a consumer, one person. So we are looking at the possible relationship between prices and quantities, of a commodity that a consumer is willing and able to buy over a period of time. That one gives us the individual demand schedule. So after getting our individual demand schedule, we deduce our individual demand schedule, and we deduce our individual demand curve from the schedule. Like I told you, we discussed in level 100 sometime. We said that in economics, we use schedule, which is table, we use graph, and then we use equation. So anything that we can present it in a functional form can also be done in a tabular form, and at the same time, we can present it in a graphical manner. So what we are saying is that, what is an individual demand schedule? We are saying that with the individual demand schedule, we are looking at the amount of good that a consumer or a person is willing and able to buy at various prices during a specified period of time. Now, based on our individual demand schedules, we can go ahead and plot the graph. Now, what we did here is that we use the coordinate. We use the coordinate, and the coordinate only represents the point. So we are looking at, if we are interested in the individual demand curve for individual 1, then we can look at the price and the quantity that was bought. So based on that, we can draw our X, Y Cartesian plane, and then we indicate the quantity on the X-axis and price on the Y-axis, and then we start plotting them. So we have 1, and then we have 10, maybe somewhere here, or 10 can come here, and we mark the point of intersection. we do same for all. When we finish, we draw a line to join all the points of intersection. And when we do that, we will get a function or a curve in this form. So the first curve is showing us individual one's demand curve. The second one is also showing us individual 1, 2 demand curve. But when we put them, the coordinate together and we plot, we are going to get the market demand curve. But what we are saying is that our main focus is on the market demand curve. So whatever we are going to discuss will be based on the market demand curve. And at the same time, I've also said that every table or every graph, we can deduce a function from it. So if you look at this graph, this is the function that we deduced. And the function is saying that quantity demand is said to be a function of price. So we could see from here that quantity demand is 0.198 price. And the 0.198, which is the coefficient of price, is the slope. So at times you may be asked, what is the slope saying? The slope is telling you how a change in the price of a commodity can affect the quantity demand of the commodity. So with this one, we saw that the quantity demand is equal to minus 0.198 P, and our P is price, plus 5.6. The 5.6 is the constant. Okay, so what is this saying? This is telling us that since the negative sign, since the coefficient is being negated, is having a negative value, it means there is an inverse relationship between price and quantity demand. And that is also telling us that if price increases by one cedi, when there is 1 cedi increase in price, there's going to be a 0.19 or a 0.2 unit increase in output. So whenever price falls, output will increase by this margin. So when price falls by 1 cedi, output is going to increase by 0.19 or 0.12 units. That is what the equation is telling us. So let's go on. Now, we've been able to deduce an individual demand schedule. We have also been able to deduce an individual market demand schedule, market demand curve. So if you are asked what is a demand curve, then the basic definition that you can give to any layman will surely be that you say that the demand curve only shows the relationship of various amounts of a product that all consumers. So if you do remember, I told you that when it comes to market demand, we are looking at all the consumers. But the emphasis here is on the product. So we are looking at the amount of product that all consumers are willing and able to buy at various prices at a given period of time. But when we are looking at the individual demand curve, then we are going to look at amount of goods and service, the amount of goods and services that a consumer is willing and able to buy at various prices. So the emphasis here is one, demand is all about our ability to buy and our willingness to buy. So if you desire something and you are unable to buy, we don't consider it as such. Okay. Now, from the graph that we drew, and from the equation that we also deduced from the graph. So the equation is just the function of the graph. And we have been said that there are a lot of tools that economists use to do explanations or make economic phenomenon, explain economic phenomenon or economic intuitions. And we said that it's either they are worse, or you are using graph, or you are using functions of mathematical forms. So when we did our computation, we find out that quantity demand we found out that our quantity demand is a function of P. And we are also saying that the slope of the P was negative. Now, it tells us that there is an inverse relationship between the price and the quantity demand. So irrespective of what we do, we believe that whenever price increases, quantity demand will fall, and the reverse holds. So whenever price of a commodity decreases or increases, the quantity of the commodity that will be bought will decline as such. And this explains what we call the law of demand. And before something can become a law, it has to be tested scientifically. And when it's scientifically proven, consistently proven, that the hypothesis has consistently been proven and tested to confirm knowledge, then we make it a law. So one of the basic law that we apply in economics, which is the law of demand, says that the higher the price, the lower the quantity demanded. And it also shows the downward sloping of the demand curve, since it has a negative slope. So because of the negative slope, that's why we say it's a downward slope. So what we are saying that as the price of a commodity, let's say per student, let's say our example, which is a bag of rice, increases, the quantity of rice that is being bought will fall. The reverse holds when we hold all other things constant. So the fact is that holding all other things constant, it means that there are certain things that can refute this claim that a higher price will reduce the quantity demand and a lower price will increase the quantity demand. We make the assumption that for this to hold, then all other factors that will influence demand must also be held constant. Now, alternatively, we can say that there's an inverse or a negative relationship between price and quantity demanded, and that defines the law of demand. Now, the basic question that we ought to ask ourselves is, why do you think that people will buy more goods or will demand more goods only when price falls, or they will buy less when price increases? So we are saying that what factors influences or explain the law of demand? And we've listed about 4 factors. And the first factor that we are talking about has to be with the law of diminishing marginal utility. The second factor, we are talking about the income and the effect. And the second factor, we are talking about the substitution effect. And the third factor, we are talking about the number of buyers in the market. So we'll take each of them and explain it one after the other, if anybody doesn't have a question. But if you have a question to whatever that we have said, please, you can put up your hand or I continue. Now, before I started with the presentation, I told you that our real income is equal to your nominal income over price. So what is your nominal income and what is your real income? Your real income, the nominal income is the income that you are holding, and that's your nominal income. And your nominal income is being influenced, your real income is being influenced by what the amount of money you have at hand can buy. Okay, so the first argument we make is this. With the diminishing marginal utility, what it's saying is that as more and more of a commodity is consumed, the additional satisfaction. So in economics, when you say marginal, we are looking at the additional benefit that we derive from consuming a commodity declines. What does this mean? It means that if you desire to hold something or consume something, when you consume something, we derive satisfaction from whatever we are consuming. So when I take a sip of water, the satisfaction that I derive from consuming that water is what pushes me to buy the water. So we say that the satisfaction that we derive, which is the MU of the commodity, the marginal utility we derive from the commodity, is always equal to the price at which we pay for the commodity, or the marginal satisfaction we derive from holding money. So what are we saying here? What we mean is that when I take water, irrespective of the price, because my satisfaction for the water is high, I am willing to pay anything for any amount. But the moment I take the water and I drink the water, that satisfaction that I derive from the water, which is the marginal utility that I derive from the water, declines. And because it is declining, my willingness to pay for another will also fall. Please, do you understand? So it means that at the initial purchasing, I have, because of the higher satisfaction, I am ready to buy large quantity at a higher price. Now, as I consume it, the satisfaction that I derive from that commodity declines. So if you are giving me that same commodity for consumption at that same price, I will prefer to hold my money, because the satisfaction that I derive from holding that money at that moment is higher than the satisfaction that I would derive from consuming an extra unit of the commodity. And then the next point we are making here has to be with your income effect. Now, the income effect is simply telling us that as and when the price of the commodity increases, my real income diminishes. And hence, because my real income is diminishing, it means that the quantity of the commodity that I can buy also declines. So it means that when the price of the commodity increases, the amount that I can buy will fall. And that explains why the demand curve is having a downward sloping shape between a relationship between price and quantity. And the second one has to do with substitution effect. Now, goods and services are said to be related. And one of the means through which goods are related is through substitution. So we have goods that are said to be substitutes. Substitute means that the same goods can satisfy the same benefit or give us the same satisfaction. For example, we talk about Milo, and then we talk about maybe chocolate. We talk about carnation milk. We talk about Ideal milk. Both goods are said to be substitutes. So in a situation where the price of one good is too high, the consumer will look for an alternative. So when the price of, let's say, carnation increases, the consumer will look for an alternative commodity that will give him the same level of satisfaction, but at a lower price. So in that case, the consumer would trade off, meaning that he will substitute carnation for Ideal milk because of the high price of carnation, and the consumer will buy Ideal milk. So by doing that, the amount of Ideal milk that will be bought will go down. And this is because the price of Ideal milk has increased. The consumer will look for an alternative, a best substitute for it. Now, the third point we are talking about has to be with the number of buyers. Now, in any environment, we can classify them into income groups. When you go to any community, we have high income groups, we have low income groups, we have middle income groups. Now, let's take that there is the price of rice falls. When the price of rice is low, it means that all these three income groups together, when you put all these three income groups, they are going to give you a higher market or a large purchase. So it means that when the price is low, all the income groups can buy. What if the price increases? Now, when the price increases, some of the income groups, especially those in the lower income group, may not be able to buy such commodities. And hence, they will also look for another alternative. And this will leave only the fewer people that have the financial muscle to purchase such commodity to do. And by that, the number of buyers have reduced. And the number of the reduction in the number of buyers is going to have influence on the quantity of the commodity that will be bought. Please, do you understand? Hello? Are you people there?
Sir, we can hear you clear.
Yes, I want to find out if the explanation is okay.
So for me, it's okay. I don't mind the rest.
Please, is the explanation okay? Can I continue?
Yes, sir.
Please continue.
All right. Let's continue. No, so these three or these four explanations that I've given is what explains the shape or the downward sloping of the demand curve. So the demand curve is downward sloping as a result of this. Normally, what happens is that students get confused. They mess up this factor that explains the downward sloping of the demand curve with determinants of demand. So at times you ask students to explain the factors that underline or that explain the downward sloping of the demand curve. You will see them writing determinants of demand. That is the main reason why I pause here to get some questions. Now let's try to define between these two basic concepts that we may be coming across. What is the difference between change in quantity demanded and change in demand? Now, from the law of demand, we have seen that whenever price of the commodity increases, quantity demand of that commodity falls. Now, from the graph, we could also see that when price was 4, the quantity of the commodity that was bought declined to somewhere here. At the same time, when price came to 1, quantity also declined to somewhere here. Now, what is this telling us? This is telling us that anytime price declines or price increases, it is either we move up or down along the demand curve. So, movement along this demand curve, as and when price of the commodity falls, or the price of the commodity increases, which we'll call quantity demand, either to move up or move down, is what explains what we call the change in quantity demanded. So change in quantity demanded is being said that we are looking at the movement along the demand curve as the quantity of a good that the consumer is willing and able to buy change in response to the change in price. So the only thing that will cause a change in quantity demanded is the price of the commodity itself. So the only thing that will make quantity demanded fall along the demand curve is the price of the commodity itself. So when price falls, quantity will increase. And that is an increase in quantity demanded. And then when price increases, quantity will fall. Then we are talking about a decrease in quantity demanded. Now, that is the basic definition that I can give. Okay, so we are looking at movement along the demand curve as a result of a fall or an increase in price. So we could see that when price reduces from 4 to 1, the consumer will move from point C to point B. And when price increases, the consumer will move from point B to point C. So the only thing that is changing here is the quantity of the good that the consumer was willing and able to buy as a result of change in the price of the commodity. So the only thing that will influence the change in quantity demanded of a commodity is the price of the commodity itself. Now, what do we mean by change in demand? So this is what I made reference to, that the main determinant of a change in quantity demanded is the price of the commodity in question. Now let's look at what we mean by change in quantity demanded. So if you do remember, we made an assumption when we said we hold all factors constant. Now there are instances where we decide to hold price constant, but quantity of a commodity that is being demanded will change. Even though price is fixed, the demand curve or the quantity of a commodity that the consumer is willing to buy can also change. And one of the factors that can influence that is income, consumer taste. So even though the price of pizza could be the same, when the people taste for pizza increases, they will buy more. So in this case, it is not the price that is influencing the change. It is other factors. So we are saying that it is a change in demand refers to a shift. So here we are looking at the bodily shift, the entire shift in the demand curve. That is caused by non-price factors. So we are looking at non-price factors, mean the price of the commodity itself. So when we hold the price of the commodity itself constant, is there anything that can cause a change in quantity demanded of the commodity itself? Now we could see that our initial curve is the blue one. That's the initial curve. Now when we move from A to B, that's we are moving left and right to the right of our demand curve, then we are saying that there is an increase in quantity demand. When we are moving from A to B, we are referring to an increase in quantity demand. But when we are moving from A to C, then we are looking at a decrease in quantity demand. So whenever the move is to the right, then it's a decrease in quantity demand. And when the move is to the if the move is to the left, then we are looking at a decrease in quantity demand. And when the move is to the right, we are looking at what? An increase in quantity demand. And there are certain factors that will cause a change in quantity demand of a commodity, while the price of the commodity is held constant. One of the factors could be natural phenomenon, or taste, or people's income, or prices of other goods and services. So when the price of other goods and services are high, are said to be high, given the same price of the commodity, because of how they are related, people will buy more of that commodity. And when people have higher income, when their disposable income is low, disposable income is high, people will still buy. Demand will increase. So we say that demand will move from A to B when the taste, the income, and let's say there's a change in weather. When there's change in weather, people in a particular commodity, let's say sweater, people will prefer to demand more sweater, even though the price has not changed. Okay, so these are some of the things that we can cause. So we are saying that when we talk about a change in demand, we are referring to a situation in which the consumer will buy either more or less of a good at the same price. So at the same price, you are either buying more or less of a good at the same price. And there are certain factors that influences that. There are factors that influences that. And some of the factors is what I have mentioned. We could also talk about a situation where the population is increasing, where people have expectation, future expectation. When people form future expectation about how the price of rice is going to be, assuming that people anticipate that the price of rice in 2 days is going to increase, people buy more now, even though the price has not changed. When people anticipate that price is going to increase tomorrow, people are going to buy more now, even though the price has not declined, because they have formed expectation about how price is going to be. And then 2, we also talk about how prices are related, commodities are related. And commodities are related from two main perspectives. One, it is either the two commodities are said to be substitutes, or two, the two commodities are said to be complement to each other. Also determines how the commodity will have an impact as a result of changing the price of other related commodities. So let's take example of commodities that have complementary goods that complement each other. Let's say a car and a fuel. So a car and a fuel. Please, I hope we all know what complementary goods are. So let's take car and fuel. Now, what is this telling us? So goods that are jointly consumed. So we are looking at goods that are jointly consumed like a car. So assume the price of car falls, holding the price of fuel constant. People will buy more fuel now, even though the price of fuel has not changed. Now, this is as a result of the fall in the price of car, and that has led to the increase in demand or quantity demand for fuel. Okay. So let's look at determinants of demand. Now, what are the determinants of demand? Now we'll look at determinants of demand. I told you that our demand, quantity demand, is a function of price. So the price of the commodity itself is also a determinant of demand. So when we talk about determinants of demand, all that we are trying to look at is anything that can cause an influence or cause a change in quantity demanded of a commodity. So if you look at all that we have been discussing, we talked about change in quantity demanded. And in change in quantity demanded, we were made to understand that the only thing that influences the quantity of a commodity that the consumer will buy is the price. So when we are talking about the determinants of demand, we are looking at both the change in quantity demanded and the change in demand, all the factors that influence the two. When we bring the two together, then we are looking at the determinants of demand. So one of the major determinants of demand, one is the price of the commodity itself. The price of the commodity itself. And another determinant of demand is the price of other related commodities. And two, we are looking at the income of the consumer, which is the disposable income. Your disposable income is your income minus tax. So after we have deducted tax from your income, the amount of money that comes to your hand for consumption, if it's high, then you are likely to spend high. And means that when people have higher level of disposable income, the amount of goods and services that they are willing and able to buy will also increase. What if the disposable income of the consumer is less? Now, when the disposable income of the consumer is less, then it means that the amount of goods and services that the consumer is willing and able to buy is going to fall. So in that case, we are going to move from blue to D. We are going to move leftward. And then I gave an example of complementary goods, but I didn't give an example of substitutes. So when we are talking about substitutes, substitutes are basically, we are looking at goods and services that satisfy, that serves the same purpose in terms of satisfaction. They serve the same purpose in terms of satisfaction. Such goods are said to be substitute to each other. So let's take a good like Vienna. Now we have Vienna, then we have UCC water. Let's say this is Vienna, and then we have UCC water. Water from UCC or any water from UCC. Now, what happens to Vienna if the price of UCC water increases? If Vienna decides not to change their price, what happens is that consumer will move to buy more Vienna because they will see the water from UCC to be high, and they will decide to consume more of Vienna because the satisfaction they derive in paying for Vienna water is high. because it's cheap. And then when we talk about population size, we are referring to the higher the population of a country, the higher the demand, the quantity demand for a commodity. And this explains why most Nigerian artists easily, when they blow in Nigeria, they easily blow in Africa, because they have the market in Nigeria. So when they all run behind you, there's a higher chance that you are going to be successful. Your album is going to be purchased. You are going to make a great market. So that explains what a determinant of demand is. So functionally, we can write this determinant of demand in a functional form by saying that our quantity demand is a function of prices of the commodity itself. Assume the price of commodity is commodity X. Then the price of related commodity, let's say Y. The income of the consumer, let's say I. Let's say population, future price expectation, which I have explained in the other slide. Please, that is, so we should be able to look at the differences as to the determinants. What determines the slope of the demand curve, or the law explains the law of the demand curve, and what is also causing a change or a shift in the demand curve. We should know these two as well. So when it comes to what is explaining the downward sloping of the demand curve, I mentioned that there's marginal utility aspect there. I also mentioned that the substitution effect, the income effect, and I also mentioned about the number of buyers that we have in the market. And then when we come to the determinants, I mentioned that we have the price of the commodity itself, although I didn't write it here. And then we also have the price of other related commodities. So if you indicate the price of other related commodities, we are saying that commodities are related from two perspectives. It is either the commodities are related as supplement to each other, or they are substitute to each other. And with supplementary goods, we are saying that goods that are jointly consumed. So when the price of one increases, the quantity is also of the other is also influenced directly as well. And with substitutes, they have an inverse relationship, since consumers will trade off one commodity for the other. So we were saying that if ideal milk increases their price, people will substitute ideal milk for Kaneshi, assuming that Kaneshi milk decide to hold its price the same. So these are some questions that we put up there for later reference sake. We can go through them and look at them at your free time as well. So now, if you do remember, I told you that everything that we can deduce it in tabular form can, however, be computed mathematically. So our market demand function that I told you, our market demand that we had various prices. So this was our market demand after adding all the individual demand curves, quantity demand, individual quantity demand. This is what we had. And from these points, we were able to deduce this demand function out from this point. So this is a linear equation, an algebraic equation, and we took this equation from the price quantity relationship. And I put up we know that for every linear equation, demand curve is a linear equation. And for every linear equation, it can be specified as this, which is quantity is equal to beta 0 plus beta 1 plus the other variable, which is P. And here, our other variable P is the price of the commodity in question. So we are saying that the P0, this P0 is the slope, and it measures the change in price as a result of change in quantity demanded. So how will quantity change as price changes? So this is telling us that anything that will cause a change, and that change, anything that will change, and that change will have an influence on quantity demanded of a commodity, is said to be a determinant of that commodity. So we did some small calculation here to see how we can deduce the demand function from the demand schedule. I don't know if I have to go through this. This is not in your model. I brought it in there. I don't know if I have to go through it for you people to understand or get the meaning of it.
Yes, sir.
Okay. So from the beginning, I told you that in any linear equation, there are two variables. So from here, these are variable, quantity demand, and these are price. So we are dealing with a binary model, which is a two variable model. Okay. And our main variable here has to be price, and another variable has to be quantity. And this beta here, this beta is a constant. And this is in mathematics, this is the formula. This is how we specify the beta or the alpha. In my equation here is alpha. This is how we specify the alpha. And what is it saying? It says we have sigma Q minus beta 0 sigma px divided by n. What is n? N will tell you the total number of the row. The row. So when we count the row, so here we count the row 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So n will be equal to 5, will be our row. So the next thing you do is to sum all the quantities. And when we sum all the quantities, we'll get 65. And then you go ahead to sum all the price to you get 15. Then what do you do next? The next, you square them. Because if you look at here, the formula here, this formula is, you have to, if you need it, you have to memorize it. This one, that is when they did not give you the demand function, but they give you a demand schedule and they're asking you to find the demand function. Then you use this formula. So our beta, which is the slope, this is how we find our slope from the table. We are saying that it's supposed to be the sigma of Q times the sigma of P. So we have to multiply P and Q. So when we multiply P and Q, we sum up their product, and then we'll get 154. Then what we do next is to square our Q and sum it. That will give us 55. We square our P and sum it. That will give us 1,135. Then we do substitution. So if you look at here, what I did here is just to substitute whatever I have here into the function. So it is saying that we should bring our n first, and we said our n is 5. We bring our n, we bring our bracket, the bracket, then we bring our quantity times our price, summation. So when quantity times price, after we found the product, we add them. The total value we had 154, we put it here. Then we bring our negative sign. Then we bring our sigma p. Our sigma p, we had 15. We also put it there. And then we go for our sigma q. We had 65. We put it there. And then we divide it by n, which is 5, times our p square, which is 55. Summation of our p square is 55. Then we also have summation of px all squared. So we square 15, and then we simplify. Please, when you simplify, you are going to get the coefficient to be minus 4.17, and then you put it into the alpha equation, and you simplify that one too. So this is just a way of simplifying it, and we are going to get a line of best fit. So here we had a line of best fit, which is that our Q is equal to 27.5 minus 4.7 px. And then what I did is just to make px the subject of the equation. And then when make px the subject of the equation, you are going to get this last equation. So we could see that the coefficient here is negative. The coefficient of the price is negative 4.7. What is that telling us? It tells us that the coefficient I told you is the slope. It is the slope or the gradient. So it tells us that whenever price increases by 1 Ghana cedi, quantity demand is going to fall by 4.7 units. This is what it's telling us. I hope you do understand this one.
So we do get it, but from our model, I think we don't get certain thing. I don't know if it has to do with myself.
Yeah, it's not in the model. The model is more theoretical. I'm just bringing in more something like practical thing in addition to the model. So that's why I told you that the schedule is there, but I just went ahead to tell you that the schedules are in your model. The tables are in your model. What I did is just deduce the model, the schedule, by deriving the demand function from the model. So if you are following what I'm doing, we have been able to deduce a graph. Okay. We have the schedule. And we can also deduce a function. Please do understand.
Yes, sir.
So from the same table, the schedule is just the table. From the same table, we can get a graph, we can get a schedule, we can also get a function. It's telling you the same thing. And I'm telling you that when you
The network is bad.
Apostle. Hello.
Hello.
It seems the network is bad. Oh, what is going on?
Please connect. mute your microphone. Hold on. Mr. Great, mute your mic.
Mute your mic.
Hello. Hello. Yes, I'm online. Yes, I'm back.
It's like the network is no good.
Yeah, the network is very bad.
Yeah.
Very bad.
Enjoying the lectures,
I like to let it.
but this network want to act to serious.
Hello, sir.
Yes, please.
Thank you.
Okay. Sorry. It got to a time I wasn't hearing you guys. Can I go on?
Yes, please, sir.
Okay. So now we are done with how the consumer will behave. So let's look at how the producer will also behave. Such. So we have seen that for the consumer, he will behave. He would like to buy more as and when the price of the commodity in question reduces. The consumer will like to buy more. What about the producer? So let's take a situation where when the price of a barrel increase, let's say a price of barrel increase to 10 cedis, Felisco offers 10 barrels to the local market. Now, it may even offer the remaining barrel to the market when the expected price is met. So let's assume that Felisco is a firm, and Felisco sells a barrel of anything, let's say barrel of oil or anything. And when the price was 10, Felisco decides to sell 10 barrels to the local market. Now, what we are saying is that Felisco, which is the company, may even be ready to sell more when the expected price of Felisco is met. That is, when Felisco is anticipating that price that he's selling is the higher price, Felisco is ready to sell more. Do you know the main reason why the producer will sell more when the price of the commodity is increasing? Because the producer is being motivated by profit motivated. So as and when the price of the commodity is increasing, it is an incentive for the producer to increase production and also to sell more. So the supplier relate price to quantity of commodity she or he is willing and able to offer for sale. So before the supplier will bring anything to sell, he will relate it to price, and he will relate the quantity. He will relate the quantity at which is ready to sell with price. So when the price is good, the supplier will supply more. And when the price is not that good and attractive, because he knows that when he issues the product to the market, is going to incur some losses, then the best thing the supplier could do is to hoard. So we see some suppliers hoarding their goods when the price of the commodity in question is unfavorable. So the various quantities of a product, let's say on oil or a bag of onion, a supplier is willing and able to offer for sale at various prices during a specified period of time is the individual supply. So with the individual supply, we can also deduce the individual supply from the individual supply schedule. So we are saying that when we talk about this individual supply, we are looking at the willingness and the ability of a supplier to offer a certain quantity of a commodity for sale at various prices. So here we are referring to a supplier, only one supplier, giving out quantities of a product out for sale at various prices is the individual supply. So we have an individual supply schedule here. which is just a table, which is showing the amount of a good that a producer. So in this case, our producer is the original Felisco, who produces barrels of oil, and Felisco is willing and able to give 5 barrels for sale when the price of oil was 5 cedi. But when the barrel increased to 10 cedis, when the price of oil increased to 10 cedis, Felisco is ready to issue 10 quantities or 10 barrels for sale. At the same time, when the price came to 15, Felisco is issuing 15 barrels for sale. And when price came to 20, Felisco is issuing 30 barrels for sale. And this relationship or this table, that is showing the amount of good, the quantity and the price of good that Felisco is willing and able to offer for sale, is what we term as the individual supply schedule. And based from the individual supply schedule, we can also compute the market supply schedule. And the market supply schedule is where we are aggregating the quantities of good. In this case, we are looking at the same good, assuming oil. So we are looking at Felisco issuing oil, Anasia, which has a stronger capacity than Felisco, is also giving out oil. And according to Anasia, he will give 9 barrels when price is 5. He will even give 15 when the price is 10. He will even give 21 when the price is 15, and he will give 40 when the price is 20. So what do we do here to get the market supply schedule? We do a vertical summation. So we sum the quantities. 5 plus 9, which will give us 14. 10 plus 15, which will give us 25. We sum all of them to get the market supply with respect to the market price. So what we are saying is that when we are talking about the market supply schedule, the market supply schedule is also a table that is showing the amount of product that producers, in this case, we are looking at all the products that producers are willing and able to offer for sale at various prices at a given period of time. So as we did for the demand curve, we can equally plot our price against our quantity. So when we draw our X, Y axis, like we have done now, so as usual, this is our X, our price, and this is our quantity. Then we pick the coordinates. So if price is 5, quantity was 14. So we look at where 5 will be, somewhere here. Quantity bought was 14. The point of intersection is here. We pick price again, which is 10, somewhere here. And the amount bought was 25. We bring it here. So after getting all the coordinates, we can join the point with a straight line. And when we join the point with a straight line, then we have successfully graphed our market supply curve. So we can graph our supply curve just like we did in the demand for Felisco alone. We can also do for Anasia alone, and we can also do for the entire market as we have done. And as you can see, the supply curve is somehow different from the demand curve. Now the supply curve is sloping upward. So it is showing a direct relationship between price and quantity that producers are willing and able to give for sale at various prices. So the market supply is defined as the amount or the quantity of a product. So it could be any product. So in our example, we are using oil, where all suppliers are willing and able to sell at each of the various possible prices. So if we are dealing with an individual supply curve, then it will not be all suppliers. Then you are looking at how a supplier, you are looking at only one supplier. So in this case, we will move the X and focus on how a supplier are willing and able to offer for sale at each price and at various prices. So we have seen that the slope of the supply curve is quite different from the slope of the demand curve. The supply curve is positively sloping, and it is showing that there is a positive relationship, or there is a direct relationship between price and quantity demanded. And this, we attribute it to the profit motive of the producer. Because for the producer, as and when the price of the commodity increases, the producer is willing and able to issue more goods for sale. And if we graph this, we are going to have, if we want to write this functionally, it's going to be quantity supply will be also a function of price. But here, the coefficient is going to be positive. And the positive is showing the direct relationship between price and quantity supply, meaning that as and when price increases, quantity supply also increases, all things being equal. And we are saying that this quantity supply, the supply is positive sloping as a result of what producers penchant for profit. Their main motive is for profit, and because of that, they will increase more supply as and when price increases. So an increase in price is an incentive to the producer to produce more, as we can see here. And we also have seen that the law of supply curve is positive, meaning that as the price of the commodity increases, the quantity of the commodity, the quantity of a commodity that the supplier is willing and able to give for will also increase as well. So all things being equal, we are saying that quantity supplied of a good rise when the price of the commodity rises, and it falls when the price of the commodity falls. So there is a direct relationship between price of a commodity and the quantity of the commodity that the supplier is willing and able to supply. All right, so let's look at what will cause a change in supply. What will make the supplier supply more of a good? So this is what we refer as the determinant of supply, or shift in supply. Now, the first thing we consider has to do with the price of other goods. The price of other goods. And two, we are also looking at the price of factors that the supplier use for production. So we are looking at the factors of production. We are looking at the input, or we are looking at the raw resources that the supplier used. So in a situation where the price of a good, let's say, if the price of the commodity, labor is cheap, then supply is likely to be high, especially when it comes to labor-intensive product. Is going to be high. What if technology is also favorable? So in a situation where technology is favorable, we are going to see that supply is going to increase. Sorry, this demand curve, supply curve is like this. So with this our supply curve, and when the supply curve shifts to the left, we are seeing a decrease in supply. If it shifts to the left, that's a fall in supply, and when it shifts to the right, we are seeing an increase in supply. So we are saying that when technology is favorable, output can be increased at a reduced cost, and that will enhance supply of the commodity in question. And two, has to do with expectations that producers form. Producers can form expectation. Now, they will know that, oh, the price of onion is going to be high tomorrow. Producers, being rational, will hold the price of onion now, expecting to sell it when the price of onion appreciates or gets better. And the number of producers here, we are looking at as and when we have more people producing a particular good. So let's say if we have 6 people producing different sachet water, then the quantity of water in total that is going to be supplied in the market is also going to be high. And then we look at government policy. Government imposes various policies. Now, one policy that the government imposes has to do with, in the case of taxes, government also gives subsidies in the form of and other transfers, subsidy. And then government also impose price controls. Here with price controls, we are looking at government coming up with ceiling, price ceiling and price floor. But for the sake of this, the book, we will concentrate on only these two aspects, the tax, and then we'll also be looking at subsidy. So based on government subsidies, government can increase supply. Government can also try to reduce supply by imposing taxes on certain firms in order for them to increase their marginal costs or their production costs so that the supply function will decrease. In the same way, government can also come with a policy like putting up quotas to protect infant industries. And when government imposes quota or try to remove any form of trade restrictions, let's say trade restrictions, government decide to remove trade restrictions, it can also affect supply either negatively or positively. So assuming that if government decide not to remove trade restrictions, but to enforce, to make the market open to any form of cement that will be coming in, then it means that the quantity of cement that is going to be supplied on the market is going to be high as such. And then we also look at natural phenomenon, like we are looking at earthquakes, we are looking at flood, we are looking at disasters and other things. Now, these factors, environmental issues, these factors or environmental issues also have rippling effect on production. For instance, if there's high flood or there is a seasonal flood and crops are being affected, it means that crops are going to wither. And when crops wither, it means that the supply of a certain crop on the market is going to decline. So natural disasters, government policies, we are looking at technology, number of producers in the market, price expectations, price of other inputs, and price of other related commodities all have an influence on the market or the quantity that the producer is willing and able to buy. Now let's look at, just like we did, we also have changes in changes in price of other commodities. Let me skip this one. Input and resources. So I have explained them. That is why I am moving them out. The points that I mentioned, I have explained them, but I just wrote the explanation here, and that is why I'm skipping to this side. So if you look at this, these are looking at technology, the policy, the number of producers, which I have explained them already. So the policy I made of government fiscal policies, where we are looking at taxes and subsidies and other monetary policies that the government undertake or other trade policies in order to help suppliers or to restrict supply of certain commodities. So from what we have been discussing, we have also realized that just as in the case of demand, we also have similar concepts in the aspect of supply. So we look at changes in supply, and I also look at change in quantity supply. What is the difference between the two? Just like we said, even at the same price, when we hold price of the commodity constant, fixed, the producer can decide, or there are certain factors that can force the producer either to produce more or produce less, even at the same price. Okay, so we are saying that our initial supply is S0. That's the initial supply curve. So a shift in the supply curve to the right of the initial means that there's an increase in supply. And when the shift is to the left, then we are looking at a decrease in supply. Okay, so an increase in supply, the producer supply more of the good at the same price. So we are talking about change in supply. So at the same price, the producer increases the quantity of the commodity that he is willing and able to sell, even at the same price. And there, if you do remember, when we're talking about the law of demand, we made certain assumption where we said we are holding other factors constant. And so when we vary such factors and we hold the price of the commodity constant and we vary those factors that we have discussed already as determinants of demand, like government policy coming in to help the supplier, could change the quantity of the commodity that the supplier will supply. In the same case, if the government decides to impose tax on supply, it means that supply will decrease and supply will move to the left of it. And if there's a favorable technology, supply is likely to move to right, even at the same price of the commodity, because producers at that time can produce larger quantity at a reduced cost because of advancements in technology. What if labor is cheap? What resources are also available? So all these factors that we are talking about, that will influence the producer to produce more other than the price of the commodity, is what we call change in supply. This is what is going to influence supply other than the change in the price of the commodity itself. So with a fall in supply, the producer will supply less of the good at the same price. And this is what we have shown by moving from X0 to X1. Similarly, we can also have instances where the producer will be supplying more or supplying less. And that is what we call it's termed as the change in quantity supply. The focus here is going to be on the change in the quantity of the commodity that the supplier or the producer is supplying. So when the price of, let's say, palm oil was 3 cedis, this is just a description of it. When the price of palm oil was, let's say, 4 or 5 cedis, we could see that the producer was willing and able to sell at point B. And at that time, the producer was willing to offer 16 barrels of oil for sale. Now, when price declined to, let's say, 120, the producer is moved to point C, meaning that at that level, is willing and able to offer only 5 barrels of oil for sale. Now, when price comes to 0, 1, the producer decides not to sell anything. So the producer will hold all his barrel and keep them. Okay, so we have seen that as and when price of the commodity increases, the producer moves from one level to another level on the same supply curve. So what we are saying is that the movement along the supply curve, as a result of the price of the commodity, which is a fall or increase in commodity, influences the quantity of the commodity that the producer is willing and able to buy. And this, we have already described that the producer will already be willing to offer more based on the profit incentive that comes from the producer, or that comes. So if the price is high and I sell high, your profit, which is equal to the total revenue minus total cost, means that our total revenue is going to increase because our total revenue is equal to price times quantity. So alternatively, the more we sell, the more revenue that we are making. So if the firm wants to sell more and quantity is high, price is high, the firm would like to sell more at that price. So any movements along the supply curve as a result of the change in the price of the commodity, resulting to a change in quantity of the commodity, result in a change in quantity of a commodity that the consumer is willing and able to offer for sale. And that is what we are terming as the change in quantity supplied by the commodity. So such movement along the supply curve is what we are referring to as changes in the quantity supplied. So in the demand, we are saying that it's changes in quantity that is being demanded. Here we are saying that it's a change in quantity that is being supplied. So the main determinant here, if you remember the demand, we said that the only thing that causes a change in quantities demanded was the price. Similarly, we are also saying that the main thing that causes the change in quantity of a commodity that the producer is willing to supply at higher price, the main determinant to the change in quantity supply in this case is the price of the commodity itself. So the price of the commodity that the consumer is issuing for sale is an incentive to the consumer to give more quantity of goods or produce more goods for sale. And we are saying that this is driven by the motive that he wants to maximize profit or make more revenue from his sales. As he makes more total revenue, given the cost, the producer makes a lot of profit from it as well. So that is it from the producer side of the equation. Now, we'll take the two markets. We have the demand, which is the consumer market, and we have the producer market, and we pull the two together and determine the efficient point or the efficient price at which the two individuals are willing to trade. Now, if you look at it, we are making two different arguments. We are making the argument that for the producer, for the consumer, he will be happier and will be willing to buy more when the price falls. This same thing or expectation does not augur well or doesn't hold for the producer. For the producer, he is only willing to sell more at a higher price. So there are instances at which these two will come into an agreement or will come into an equilibrium. And when these two individuals or trade partners or economic agents come together, the point of agreement between the two, in terms of the amount of price each of them is willing and able to buy, is what we term as the equilibrium point. At that point of the that equilibrium point, which is the point of intersection between the quantity supply, between what the producer is willing to offer for sale and what the consumer is also willing to buy. So these are the respective prices from the table. These are the respective prices. Now, from the respective prices, on the second column, we have the market demand. We have the market demand. And on the third column, we have the market supply. So let's assume that we have our demand curve, which is downward sloping, and we have our supply curve, which is upward sloping. And the point of intersection, the point E, determines the point at which the two agrees to trade. And the corresponding quantity indicates the point at which the two have also agreed. That the supplier is willing to supply and the consumer is also willing to purchase at that same quantity. Now let's analyze it and see. So that equilibrium point, we are saying that at the equilibrium point, the quantity that the consumer is demanding is equal to the quantity that the supplier is willing to supply at that point. So at that point, the market is said to be cleared. Both parties have reached an agreement. So it is at that point, the market is said to be cleared. Now let's look at a situation where the price is fixed above the equilibrium point. Now, when price is fixed above the equilibrium point, as we can see from the red line, let's say price is at 24. Meanwhile, the consumer and the producers are willing to meet at, let's say, 16, price 16. Now, what happens is that when the price is too high for the consumer, he will reduce the quantity he's willing and able to consume. So at that point, the consumer decides to only buy 3 units of the commodity. But at that same point, the producer, because of the profit motive, is willing to give more or to supply more, which is 11. Now, the difference between the two, meaning that the producer produces excessively, he overproduces compared to what the consumer is willing and able to buy at that very price. So at that price, at that point, we are saying that there is an excess supply, or we say there are surpluses, meaning that not all what the producer produces is what is bought or what is consumed. So at that point, there are surpluses or there is excess supply. Secondly, what if the price is said to be low equilibrium point, let's say 5 cedi. Now, the producer feels that at that lower point, price is too low for him to produce. So what he does is to produce less quantity. So we could see that the producer is producing lesser quantity, but to the consumer, he wants more to buy. He would like to buy more at that level. So if consumer quantity demand at that level is higher compared to the quantity of the commodity that is being supplied. So at that point, there is wastage, there are shortages in the market. What consumers want, the quantity of goods that the consumers are expecting and able to buy at that price is not what the suppliers are willing and able to supply to them. Because the suppliers think that when they supply at that level, they'll be making losses. And to the consumer, at that level, when they buy more, they'll be maximizing benefits from purchasing. So we should keep note of that as well. So we are saying that at point E, which we know is our equilibrium point, it is that is the point where the economic forces are balanced. And at that point, there is no tendency for a change unless there are external forces or an external shocks or government intervenes. So if you look at it, everybody is happier to be here at point E. The consumer is happier. There's no surpluses, there's no excesses, there's no shortages. Everybody is happier. But whenever the government intervenes and the government decides to, let's say, put in a tax, government decides to impose tax by intervening. Now what will happen is that the producer will cut down the supply. So supply line will fall to this place. And at that price, at that point, producer will be ready to sell their goods to the consumer at a higher price. And quantity demand will also fall, decline, as we have seen from here. So when government interferes in the market, one, it brings distortion. As we could see, the producer will produce less. It will also increase his price. And then there is some kind of wastages or inefficiencies in the market. So initially, they were all benefiting from this level, this bigger level. But as government intervene, they are only benefiting from only this level. There is a place, this shaded place, that is said to go waste. So there's kind of inefficiencies in the market when government is trying or government intervenes. But there are times government intervenes because government also thinks that there are inefficiencies and he intervenes to correct such inefficiencies, especially when they believe there is a market failure. So let's continue. So at the equilibrium price, quantity demand is equal to quantity supply. So this is an equilibrium condition. So at that level, the price of the commodity are also equal. Quantity supplied is also equal to quantity demanded. And we are saying that when at equilibrium, the market is cleared. And there, it means there is no wastages, there is no shortages, and there is no surplus as well. All sellers can sell as much as they want, and buyers can also buy as much as they want. But there are also situations. So we are saying that assume the market price is fixed above it, which we have discussed, but maybe let me go through it again. So let's assume government put in a price which is above here, equilibrium. Please, I hope you can see. I hope you can see. I'm trying to write in the graph. I don't know if you
Yes,
see.
sir.
You can see. Okay. So now let's assume this is equilibrium point. And the equilibrium point, we are assuming that the market is cleared. We are saying that consumers can buy what they want to buy, and producers can also sell what they want to sell. But this time, government decide to fix, or government comes in, or let's assume there's no even government intervention, but price is even fixed above the equilibrium price. Okay. When price is fixed above the equilibrium price, what happens is that you just draw a straight line to touch all the curves and draw that line back to touch the quantity. You could see that the demand, quantity demand at that point is 4, and quantity supply at that point is 11. What is it telling you? What it's telling us is that suppliers are ready to give more, whilst consumers are only ready to buy less because of the high price, and the people that can buy are very few in such instances. Now, what is happening is that there's a gap. So we are looking at 11 minus 4, which is 6. Or I say, which is 8 or 7 or something. Let's take whatever it is. Okay, so let's take any number there. So what we are saying is that at that point, we could see that quantity supply exceeds quantity demand. Indeed. So what do you think will happen at that point where quantity supplied is exceeding quantity demanded? Can someone answer me? We are saying that quantity supplied is exceeding quantity demanded. Why? Please, I hope you people haven't left me for me to be talking. I hope you guys are there.
Yes, sir, we are here.
So let's speak to some of the graphs. Let's speak to the graph. Everybody should unmute himself. Let's speak to the graph. What I'm saying is that now government price has escalated above equilibrium point. Okay, equilibrium is supposed to be 15, and now equilibrium, the price is now above equilibrium, which is 15, 25. What do you think will happen in the market?
There will be surplus in the market.
There will be surplus.
There will be surpluses. Why? Because quantity supplied is exceeding quantity demanded. Okay, so at that point, producers will not be able to sell all what they have brought to the market to sell. Okay, so producers cannot sell everything that they have brought to the market to sell. That's why I was doing some deduction. So even if consumers are buying 4 and they are giving 11, it means there is a surplus of about 7. Okay, now what do you think the producer would do when they are having surpluses? Because he wants to sell the surplus.
He
Okay.
So he will reduce the price.
Exactly. So producer will cut down price. So when producer is cutting down price, he's cutting down price so he can sell more. And the cut down price is also an incentive to the consumer. So to the consumer, he will do what? If you are cutting down price, do you think you increase production? Since the producer already has some surpluses there, he cuts prices and reduces what? Productivity or production. So he cut price and reduce production. So we are seeing that production output is reducing and price will decline. Okay, but this is an incentive to the consumer. Consumers will also respond to this price reduction by what? Increasing the quantity of your commodity that they are also willing and able to buy. And this situation will happen until what? Equilibrium is restored. So what we are trying to say is that when you leave the market, like the classical economists propose, when you leave the market without the government intervention, even if the price of the commodity is in the market is above the equilibrium, the economic forces, that is demand and supply, will interact in a way that equilibrium will be restored back again. So that is the argument that we are making. So these forces will act in the sense that equilibrium will be restored again. So as the price falls, consumers are being motivated to buy more of the goods, and hence quantity of the commodity that the consumers are willing to buy will also increase. And this thing will continue until what? Equilibrium price and equilibrium is restored. So at equilibrium, the surpluses that we were talking about will be eliminated or exhausted. And when it happens, there is no tendency for price to change as well. So at that point, the market is said to be cleared. Now, let's look at other instances. Now, let's look at instances where quantity demand is changing and is said to be constant. So we are saying that how does change in any of the curves affect the equilibrium price and equilibrium quantity? So first, we will draw our demand curve. So this is our demand curve, and this is our supply curve. The point of intersection is the equilibrium price and equilibrium quantity. So this is the point of intersection, and this is our price level. Now let's assume that due to certain circumstances, other determinants. So here we are assuming that disposable income has increased. So let's assume that consumers' disposable income has now increased. The consumer who was earning, the government has decided to reduce tax. He has taken away bet tax, or he has taken away mobile money tax. So now people have more money to spend. Now, when people have more money to spend, what is going to happen is that your demand is going to increase. So you could see that our demand shifted from blue to green. So our demand curve has moved from DD0 to DD1. Supply is said to be constant. Supply has not changed. Now, at that level of that initial price level, where demand has increased to this place, there is a disequilibrium, M. So at the initial price, if you could see, at this initial price, so we draw the initial price to come and touch the demand curve. So you could see that people expect quantity demand to increase. But what is happening to quantity supply? Quantity supply, since it has not changed, is still at scale 0. Now, what will happen when there is disequilibrium? So, per our knowledge that we apply, we are saying that this is how much consumers want to consume. So that's the quantity demand. Okay. So quantity demand at that point is greater than quantity supply. We are seeing that quantity supply is only Q0, but the quantity demand is QM. If we can see. So what is happening there? Is there a surplus or there's a shortage in the market? Here, demand exceeds supply. So if demand is exceeding supply, then obviously there is a shortage in the market. And we all know one of the effects of economic shortage in the market. So when there is shortage in the market, the producer will take advantage of it. Okay. The producer will take advantage of it. And one disadvantage of shortages is black market. And what do we know about black market? The Kalabule thing. People are ready to pay more. Because there's shortages, consumers are ready to pay more for the commodity. Now, because consumers are ready to pay more, consumers will bid for higher price. So when they bid for higher price, it is a boost for profit. When suppliers sees this, it encourages them to increase supply. So suppliers, being rational, will also increase the quantity of the commodity that they will supply. Please, are you getting it?
Yes, sir.
Yes.
Yes,
So as quantity increases and the consumers are also ready to buy more, the increase in price is causing the producer the producers to increase their product. And this, we are seeing that will happen until the supply of the supply curve meets the initial demand curve at this point. So what will be the total effect? Now, the total effect is that whenever demand changes, price of the commodity will change and quantity demanded of the commodity will also change. So what you are saying is that if demand increases and supply does not increase, the end report is that there will be an equilibrium point, but at that point, price is going to be high. Quantity demanded, equilibrium quantity is also going to be high. Now let's take a situation where demand has decided to fall. Demand falls. In this case, there's our disposable income has fallen as a result of imposition of heavy taxes on us. Now, when that happens, or heavy on consumers, let's say on consumers' income, so they put taxes on consumers' income, or the other determinants that are not favorable to the consumer, and because our consumer taste has fallen. Now, while supply of the commodity remains constant. So the supply line is our black line, and this is our initial demand curve. This is also our initial price, and this is our equilibrium, initial quantity, and initial price. Now, what happens is that a fall in price in the demand curve will cause the demand curve to shift to the left. So we are seeing the demand curve shifting to the left. So when the demand curve shifts to the left, at the initial point here, we are seeing that quantity demand has reduced. So at that point, quantity demand is less than quantity supply. And when quantity demand is less than quantity supply, then we all agree that there's a disequilibrium. But at that market, there's going to be what? Surpluses. Is that not it? Yes. So at that market, there is surplus in the market or excess supply. And when there is surplus in the market, it means that most of the items that the producer produces is not bought. And for the producer, the best the producer can do is to reduce the best the producer can do is to reduce the price. Okay, to reduce the price in order to clear the market. So the producer will reduce the price. Then as he is reducing the price, he's also reducing the quantity of the commodity that he is producing. Now to the consumer, the reduction in the price is an incentive to the consumer. So the consumer will also try to increase consumption or increase his purchase as such. Please just give me 1 minute. I'll be with you. So the argument you are making is this: as the supplier reduces the price, he reduces the quantity of the commodity that he produces and supplies. And this reduction is also a motivation or it's an encouragement to the consumer to demand more. So the consumer will also increase his demand. And we are saying that this will push, or these activities will continue until a new equilibrium is restored at E1. So at E1, we have seen that when there is a fall in the price, in the demand, price is going to fall. When there's fall in demand, given that supply doesn't change, then price is going to fall. Quantity of commodity or equilibrium quantity is also going to reduce as well. So both price and quantity, equilibrium price and equilibrium quantity is going to fall as such. So there's another states that what if supply increases and demand does not change? Please, can somebody talk to this one? Speak to this one. What happens to equilibrium price and equilibrium quantity when supply changes but demand remains unchanged? So we could see that supply will move to where? Will move to the right, will move downwards will move to the right, showing that there is an increase in supply. And at the initial level, which is the initial price level, there is a disequilibrium at market M. Now, this is telling us that supply has increased. So it means that quantity supply exceeds quantity demand. Now, when quantity supply is exceeding quantity demand, then it means that there's excess supply or there's surpluses in the market. Okay. Hello.
Yes, sir.
Okay. So when there's surpluses in the market, it means that there are a lot of goods that are being produced that are unsold. And to a producer, a rational producer, the best the producer can do is to do what? Is to reduce the price in order to clear the excess supply. So by reducing the price, we are also saying that it is an incentive to the consumer, and the consumer will respond to the price reduction by buying more. But as the producer reduces the price, he does not only reduce the price, he also reduces the quantity of the commodity that he brings to the market, so that the one that he has already brought to the market will be cleared. And when he does that, and consumers are also responding to it, then the two will meet, where demand will gradually meet supply, or supply will gradually meet demand at a new equilibrium. And at that point, we are seeing price of the commodity reducing, and we are seeing quantity of the commodity increasing as such. So if you want to draw this, you can just draw your supply curve, your demand curve. This is the equilibrium. And when price changes, it means that when supply changes, supply is falling to this level, So X0, X1, and this is the new equilibrium point. Price will fall, quantity demand will increase. So what is the total effect or the total impact? The total impact is that there is going to be a fall in price, and equilibrium quantity is also going to decrease. So now let's look at what about a situation where we are seeing price or supply falling? So let's look at a situation where we have supply falling. What if supply falls? So if supply falls, let's assume this is our curves. This is our supply, which S0, and this is our demand, D0, X0. So when price falls, supply falls, it means that it's going to move to the left. Is that not it? So supply will move to the left like this, giving demand constant. So this is the new equilibrium point. So at this point, price will go up. Quantity demand will fall. Quantity demand will fall. Price will increase. So what is causing this? So what I've told you that at that point, when price, at the initial price, at this point, this will be the disequilibrium point. Okay. So at the disequilibrium point, we are seeing that quantity supplied is lesser. It's lesser than quantity demand. So when quantity supplied is lesser than quantity demand, you all agree with me that there is shortage in the market. And when there is shortage in the market, one disadvantage of shortage in the market is that it leads to black market. And there is scarcity. Okay, so because of the scarcity and the repercussion it has on bringing about inefficiency and black market, consumers are ready to offer a higher price for that quantity. And because consumers are willing to bid for higher price, producers are motivated to increase production as well. So these two interactions will happen. So producers will not only increase production, they will increase production to enjoy the profits because of the profit motives behind it. And this will happen, interaction will happen until equilibrium is restored. So at that point of equilibrium, we will see that price will go up and output will decline. So there are also instances where we are seeing a simultaneous change in both demand and supply. What that is telling us is that both demand and supply are going to change at the same time. And let me also stress that this slide is not in your book. Okay, but what we are saying is that, but the analysis is in your, what I'm going to show you is in your book. What I did here is in your book. But we have what happens. The basic question is what happens to equilibrium price and quantity when both demand and supply changes simultaneously. So we are looking at where demand and supply are changing simultaneously, and we are saying that we have 4 instances where when the two are changing simultaneously. There are 4 instances. So you could be asked of any instance. Just that for this course, for this presentation, we will do for only the first one. And when at your own free time, you can look at the second, the third one, and then the last one and do your own analysis. So we can see a situation where both demand and supply are increasing. So we are seeing that demand increases, supply is increasing. We can also have an instance where demand is falling, supply is increasing. We shall also have an instance where demand and supply are both falling. And you can have an instance where demand is falling and supply is increasing. So these are the 2 instances that we can have. Now the simultaneous change in the two can also have three instances. The simultaneous changes could happen in a way where the change in the demand is greater than the change in supply. So we have where change in demand is more than the change in supply. And we can also have a situation where the change in demand is equal to the change in supply. This one, I'm looking at the magnitude of change. And then we can also have a situation where the change in demand is less than the change in supply. So for now, let's look at where both what happens to equilibrium when both price when supply and demand are both increasing simultaneously. When both price and demand are increasing simultaneously. All right. So let's draw our graph. Case one. So case one, we are looking at where the change in demand is lesser than the change in supply. So this is the first case. So the first case, you are looking at where change in demand is lesser than the change in supply. So let me draw it. I don't know if it will not be confusing. This is our X, this is our price, this is our quantity. Okay. Let me see if I can pick a different color. It's still red color. Okay. So this is our demand. Please, can you see the yellow card? Can you see the yellow mark?
Yes, please.
Okay, so let's say this is our initial demand curve. Let me pick another color again. This is our initial supply curve. Okay, so now the argument we are making is that the change in demand is lesser, although both are increasing. So we pick another color, and then we realize that the change in demand is too small. So we make a small change in demand and bring it to D1. And the change in price, which is the increase in price, is bigger. So we'll pick another color. Let me pick a blue. And then see that the change is quite bigger. Okay. Now, the first point of intersection was here. This is price. And this was quantity. What is the next point of intersection? The next point of intersection between the changes, two changes, is here. I don't know if you can see it. So we could see that when change in X, or when the change in demand, or the magnitude of change in demand is less than the change in supply, we are able to know that price was initially here. You could see price has fallen. Price falls, and quantity demand increases. Please, can you see it? Can you see that my drawing?
Yes, please.
Okay. So I hope it is clear. Or I should go over it.
Sir, please come again.
Yes, please go over it, sir.
Okay, let me clean this. This is a bit complex. That's why I'm taking my time for you to get it. We are saying that both curves are increasing. We are considering a case where both curves are increasing. So this is our axis. This is our price axis, and this is our quantity axis. Okay. And then we draw our demand curve. This is our initial demand curve. We draw our initial demand curve. So we name it D0. Okay. And then we also draw our initial supply curve. Let's say this is X0. And P0 is our initial price. Q0 is our initial quantity. Now, we have been asked that supply will change, but the change in supply is more than the change in demand. So I can draw my other supply, my X2, which we said is changing, is increasing. So I've decided to draw it to this place. Okay, it's increasing, so I decided to draw it to this place, which is D. This is X rather, X1. So let's say we've drawn it to this place, X1. But the demand, the change in demand is so small. This is the change in demand. The change in demand is too small. Okay. So when you look, then this is D1. So what we do is that we compare where the two new lines are intersecting. So this is where the two new lines were intersecting. So we will draw it to touch the others. To touch the others. So here we have P1. Here we have Q1. So then we compare. We could see that price is falling. Okay, this was initial price. Price is falling. But here you could see that quantity is increasing. So quantity has increased from here to here. Price has fallen from here to here. So in a nutshell, we are saying that when both supply and demand are changing simultaneously, in a situation where they are both increasing, but the magnitude of increase in the supply curve is greater than the demand curve, then we are going to have instances where price is going to fall, but quantity demanded is going to increase. I hope that one is okay. So we are seeing a fall in price. We have seen an increase in quantity demanded. But that doesn't also end there. There are instances where the demand curve is going to increase more than the supply curve. Because I told you we have three instances when both are changing simultaneously. So let's look at the other instance. So I'll claim this. And let's look at the other instance as well. So with the other one, let's say this is my demand. These are X and Y. I don't know why the thing is too thick. Okay. Then. Okay, I pick highlights. Okay, so let's say this is our XY axis. Okay, so now we draw our demand curve. This is 0. We pick another color. We draw our supply curve. This is X0. So this is our initial price, P0. This is our initial quantity, Q0. But we are also arguing that demand, this time, demand is going to change more compared to supply. So it means that demand is increasing higher. So we bring demand. Let's assume that demand has increased to this place. Oh, let me use a different color. So let's assume that demand has now increased to a bigger margin, D1. But the change in supply was very small. So the increase in supply is small. Okay, so this is the point of intersection between the two lines. Okay, so we trace the point of intersection to the price line, and then we trace it also to this place. What have we seen? We have also seen that when supply is small, but the change in demand is high, price is going to increase, and quantity demand is going to increase. Please, can you see this one? So we have seen that when demand, the change in demand is greater than the change in supply, quantity demand is going to increase, but the price of the commodity is also going to increase. So here, both price and both quantity are increasing. But the first one that we did, where the change in supply was greater than the change in demand, we saw that quantity increased, but price fell. However, here we are seeing that both quantity and price increased. Then we come to our last point. And our last point, we are looking at a situation where both price and demand change, where quantity demand and supply curve and the demand curve change at the same magnitude. So we are looking at where the magnitude of change is the same. So in that case, we have our demand here. We have our supply here. The point of intersection is here. And we are having the change in supply, which is this D small, so D1. And then let's look at the change in demand. The change in demand and the change in supply, we have said they are the same. So we look at it as this. It's same. So this is the point of intersection. We draw the line to this start, and then we draw our quantities down. So we could see that when the change in demand is the same as the change in supply, and both are changing to the same direction, that is when the increase in demand is the same as the increase in supply, price will not change, but quantity demand will increase. So what we are trying to say is that under both instances, in all the three instances, we realize that when the change between the supply curve and the demand curve, when both increase and the magnitude of the change is the same, quantity will increase, but price will remain constant. In the same way, if the change in supply exceeds the change in the demand curve, then price is going to fall, but quantity demand is going to increase. Similarly, when the demand curve increases more than the supply curve, then price is going to increase and quantity is also going to increase. So what are we saying? We are saying that whenever there is a change, a simultaneous change, quantity demand increases. Whenever there is a change, an increase, let me be specific. Whenever there is a simultaneous increase in both the demand and the supply curve, quantity demand will increase, but the price will depend on the magnitude of change. So the price can either be the same it can increase or it can decrease depending on the magnitude of change between these two variables. Please, is that okay? Is that okay? Are you people there?
Yes, sir.
I think we agreed to end when 7 o'clock.
Yes, please.
Yes, and we have done 7:22, and that's the main reason why I'm asking for 4 days, so that I can complete the course before you people write the quiz. I couldn't even use 1 day to the 2 hours 30 minutes to finish the first what we call unit. So it is left with elasticity. This one, what you are seeing here has to do with government intervention and government welfare, which is not in your model. So I will not treat it. I will skip it, and I will go to elasticities so that these ones are not in your book. The producer surplus, consumer surplus are not in the book. So I'll skip all these ones, and then in our next meeting, I will. These are not in your book, so I don't know if you need it. Fine, but they are not in the book. But we have also thought about it anyway. If you need it, I can treat it as well. Looking at the deadweight loss and other things. So please, our next meeting will be the elasticity of demand and elasticity of supply. So we will look at the various elasticities, the arc elasticity, the income elasticity, the cross elasticity as well. So I am still waiting. I'm on the platform. I don't know if the time that we have scheduled is going to hold for all our lectures. Then we can continue, I think, tomorrow. Did we agree to meet tomorrow also?
Friday.
Friday.
Yes.
Okay. Friday to have lectures with some group. It's not easy. All right. So please go through. After Friday, we'll see what to do next. Okay. So the next lecture is Friday. That's what you are saying.
Yes.
Then we'll have our regular Saturday lecture, Sunday lecture.
On Sunday. Yes.
On Sunday. Okay. I wish you all the best, please.
Thank you, sir.
Is the course rep there?